Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Dr. Glenn Vo. I'm super excited to have Brannon Moncrief here from McLerran Associates. Before I get into this episode, I like to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, DocSites. Now, having a website is super important for your practice, but it doesn't have to be expensive. DocSites has been hooking us up with amazing deals with websites for a long time. Go check them out and make sure you ask for the Nifty Thrifty deal. Okay, so I'm just going to address a question that I have and so many people have, and that is, who the heck is McLerran? Who is that guy?
So McLerran is the namesake of our company, and it's the founder, Paul McLerran. Paul was a practicing dentist in San Antonio for about 10 years, developed a hand disability, forced him out of the chair, and decided to start McLerran Associates. And this is way back in '87.
Oh, wow. And so you guys just kept the name. You never had the desire to change it to Moncrief and Associates, maybe?
We've definitely chatted about it. We've definitely debated it. But Paul had such a great reputation, and we spent so much time and energy building the brand over the past 10 years. It's a way for us to honor him and also, not walk away from all the hard work we've put in to build it.
I love that. I love the history behind it. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with who you are, what you do, explain to our listeners, explain to our viewers, what does McLerran Associates do and how they help out dental practice owners?
Absolutely. So McLerran specializes in dental practice appraisals and sell-side representation. So anything involving selling or transitioning a dental practice. We do doctor-to-doctor transactions in Texas, and then we do sell-side representation for DSO transactions nationwide. So large practice owners that are looking to affiliate with a DSO or partner with private equity, we come in, educate them on their EBITDA, their practice value, and then if it makes sense to go the DSO direction, help take them to market, create a highly competitive environment, and maximize their practice value, maximize the outcome from the sale.
So, you probably get this all the time, and it's probably slightly annoying. Kind of like my realtor friends when I tell them like, I'm just gonna look around for a house and just kind of throw out some offers, and they look at me like, come on, man, I'm a realtor. I was like, well, can I do it myself? I can go on Zillow and whatnot. So I'm sure you get doctors, I'm sure you hear people saying, well, you know what, I'll talk to these DSOs. I'll talk to this other doctor. We'll just kind of write up something and just kind of wing it. When you hear those stories, I'm sure it annoys you, but why is that such a bad strategy to take when you're trying to make a transition?
That's a great question. So we like to say if you've met one DSO, you've met one DSO. Every doctor is at a different place in their career, a different place in their life. They all have a different why as to why they want to pursue a private equity partner or a DSO affiliation. And every DSO is different, so it's important to create optionality. Not only so that you find the right fit in a DSO that can help support your why, but also you want to create competition because that's going to enhance the economic outcome from the transaction. And every deal structure is different as well. Yeah. So when it comes to support and infrastructure, when it comes to culture, when it comes to economics, when it comes to deal structure, every doctor is looking for something different. Yeah. So I think it's really dangerous to talk to just one buyer because you're not going to have perspective on the multitude of options that are available in the marketplace.
And let's just be honest here. You only know what you know, right? So if you're dealing with like a DSO or another seller and they have representation, they're taken care of, right? And If you're just walking in there, you only know what you know. And let's do this. Let's share. I'm sure you have plenty of stories. I'm sure you have plenty of horror. Let's share a couple of scenarios that you've been through. Have you seen other people when they didn't have representation? Maybe it's someone who almost made a big mistake and you were there to kind of help them out, or maybe some mistakes you heard. Talk about some of these kind of horror stories that you've heard when people try to do these things on their own.
I think the recurring theme is doctors that talk to us and ultimately decide to do it on their own and then come back around.
Oh, gosh.
Once they've gone to market, started entertaining interest from different DSOs and started to look at offers. And we recently had that happen with one of our now clients where we did an EBIT analysis, we did a valuation, and he decided to go at it on his own. And he was introduced to a DSO by his CPA. And he entertained only this one DSO and spent a lot of time going through the diligence process, providing them with all the information that they need, and finally got a written offer, which was substantially lower than our valuation. Oh, wow. And he wasn't thrilled with the deal structure either. So at that point, he came back, made a phone call.
A little bit of humble pie?
Little bit. I tried not to say I told you so, but he quickly realized that he did not have the perspective he needed to evaluate whether he had a good offer in hand or not. He could see the top line number from an enterprise valuation, but these deal structures are pretty complicated. There's a lot of strings attached to DSO deals, and the outcome, the deal structure, the economics can vary greatly from DSO to DSO. Yeah. And oftentimes it's very situational. We'll see a particular DSO bid millions of dollars higher than the other buyers at the table because they want to plant a flag in that market, or they really just fell in love with that practice and that doctor. So it's very situational as to what the doctor is trying to accomplish and then what the DSO is looking for, which is why you want to create a lot of optionality and have 3, 4, 5, 7 offers on the table if you're going to take your practice to market.
It's just like selling your house, right? Like you wouldn't just say, okay, I'm just going to sell to this one person here and not even open it up to everyone else.
Right. The analogy is you're not looking to sell your house, and then someone knocks on your door and offers to buy it, and you sell it to them in that moment. Who would ever do that? No one would ever do that.
That's a pretty good analogy there. Now, disclose as much as you can. I'm not asking for you to break in any NDAs or any confidentiality clauses or whatnot, but from the deal that person got and the deal that ultimately you helped them secure, like how far apart was that?
We expect the practice to sell for about $2 million more than the offer that they have on the table.
Wow.
And that's a common theme where we start talking to doctors oftentimes when they already have a few offers on the table. Mm-hmm. And we say, hey, time out. Let's take a step back. Let's do our own EBIT analysis. Let's regroup. Let's educate you about what this process should look like. Let's define your why. And then let's go back to market. We can give those buyers that already have offers on the table a seat at the table, but we're going to control the narrative. We're going to set the table and ensure that they put their best foot forward.
Wow, that's such great advice because, again, a lot of people, a lot of our listeners, a lot of our viewers, you're probably getting these mailers. You're probably getting some emails. You probably run into people at a conference. And guys, you might not be thinking about selling today, but you should be planning on at some point. My whole process in this, a lot of people know that I partnered with MB2, but that process started years ahead of time. And I was just walking through a dental conference, and I happened to walk into this massive booth with Heartland. And so I walk up to the Heartland guy, and I was like, hey, what kind of practices do you guys buy? And he looked at me, and he was like, well, you got to have at least 7 ops. And at that time, I'm kind of dating myself, but at that time, he was like, yeah, you got to be making at least $700,000, right, at the practice. And I was like, okay, $700,000, at least 7 ops, right? And so I wasn't going to sell it to Heartland at the time, but then I had in my head, okay, well, this is what I need to do to make my practice more valuable, right?
Exactly.
I got to be able to expand and whatnot. But again, you only know what you know. And if people are thinking about, maybe they're not ready to sell, but maybe they're thinking about that, is that still a good situation or level to be at to reach out to you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We start, it's a long sales cycle. Many of our relationships are 3, 4, 5-year relationships before the practice actually goes to market. The DSO route is a legitimate option these days. And if you aspire one day to liquidate the equity in your business, it's good to get educated early on. A couple of years in advance to learn about what are DSOs looking for, what drives value in the DSO world, what things can you do to your practice to enhance value and marketability, and then what mistakes should you avoid. We love having those conversations, and we give people completely objective advice. We're in no hurry to take a practice to market. I'm in no hurry to convince someone to sell to a DSO. We're really blessed to be busy, so we want to take the practice to market at the opportune time, when it's got the most marketability, when it's got the highest valuation, when market conditions are favorable, because we want the best outcome we can possibly get.
Now, would you say this is like a true statement here? The worst time to sell is when you want to walk out the door?
Absolutely.
Because that's everyone's philosophy. It's like, okay, they throw down their hand piece. The hell with this. I'm out of here. I want to sell tomorrow. Is that the worst?
We get that a lot, but that's the absolute worst time to sell your practice. The best time to be a seller is when you're not a seller.
Yeah. That's great. That's great advice. So let's now we're going to take a couple of steps. We're going to take a couple of steps back here. We've talked about what you guys do. We talked about the DSO space. There's more questions about that. We'll definitely go back, but I want to kind of go back in time a little bit. And how did you get kind of wrapped up in this crazy world of dentistry? How did you get in, and how did you kind of get in with McLerran Associates? Tell us about like your pathway in getting into dentistry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that. So I have a finance degree from Texas A&M University. And
I'm not going to hold that against you, man. All right? I'm not going to hold that. You guys know me and the UT, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all right.
We're getting along all right so far. We'll see. We'll see how this turns out. So I got a finance degree from A&M, interviewed with a lot of companies coming out of school, and went to work for a relatively small finance company based in Houston that specialized in lending money to dentists all over the country to specifically buy practices. So started off as an underwriter there, underwriting dental acquisition loans, and then worked my way up to the point where after 9 years, when I left the company, I was the director of dental and veterinary lending. In that time frame, I was involved in about 1,000 practice sales from a financing perspective. But I got the opportunity to work with all the dental practice brokers across the country, all the dental CPAs, dental attorneys, and learned a lot about each of those roles in that transaction, and decided at one point that I wanted to leave lending, but I didn't want to leave the dental industry. I knew an insane amount about dental practice transitions. I had seen what I liked, what some brokers did, and what I didn't like, and knew that there was an opportunity to provide more professionalism, ethics, organization to that process, to practice.
And we definitely a lot of the ethics part there. So it's kind of like it's a very common theme. Someone gets into dentistry, and then we sink our talons in you, and you can't get out. So it sounds like that's what happened here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good industry to be in, right? And I've enjoyed 22 years of it, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So at the point where I wanted to leave lending, there were a handful of brokers in Texas that I respected, McLerran being one of them. And I knew that Paul was getting older and probably looking at a transition at some point. So I approached him and his son about the fact that I wanted to leave lending and become a broker. And Paul was ready to retire. David wasn't quite experienced enough to take over the business on his own. So Paul said, why don't you and David partner and buy the business from me? I'll retire and you guys take it over. 2 months later, I moved from Houston to Austin.
Wow.
David and I took over the business, and we never looked back. So David and I were together for about 6 years before he made the decision, even though we were crushing it, doing very, very well, had built the company up substantially. It wasn't his passion. Yeah. And he really loved photography. He actually traveled the world, left the business, and became a photographer for Nat Geo.
Wow.
So he's living the dream. I don't know who got it right or who got it wrong, but he's having a good time living an interesting life. And at that time, my brother came over from Patterson Dental and bought David out and became my partner in the business.
Well, the thing that I notice here, the big thing is that you've been in dentistry for quite a long time. You've been on both sides there. And again, whenever we think about having the right representation, I mean, you want someone who has been in the industry, who has the contacts, who has worked with multiple practices, who understands the financial aspect. I think that's super important right there, because a lot of times doctors will say, well, I think my practice is worth this. And then, there's this thing called EBITDA, right? Like those numbers don't lie. So with that being said, talking about EBITDA and all those different things there, there's so many dentists out there who say, I never want to sell to a DSO. And I'll see them posted, they're like, I'm not going to sell to DSO. And I just think to myself, that is probably, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying it's probably one of the most idiotic things I've ever heard. It's almost like someone, I'm going to sell my house, but I'm not going to sell them to any Aggies. I'm just only selling you to people, right? Like that is like the most idiotic thing there. And let's talk about that. If someone is thinking about doing a transition, why should they, there's so many reasons, but why should they be open to selling to single practice owner, selling to DSOs. Why should they be open to opening that up to everyone?
I think it's foolish to limit your optionality and your opportunities. It's wise to get educated about all the options available and then make the decision that's right for you and your practice. And look, I can speak to this. So for a long time, we wouldn't even bring up the DSO option to our sellers because, quite honestly, they would run us out of their office. I would say that the old school DSO moniker was very negative. I'll call it DSO 1.0. That is the big, large clinic-style doc-in-the-box DSOs that really focused on doing de novos.
Yeah.
But about 7 to 10 years ago, starting with Heartland, it became DSO 2.0, where they buy well-run practices and try not to screw them up.
Yeah.
They learn to stay in their lane, support dentists from a business perspective, and allow dentists to keep the leadership role, the clinical autonomy, as well as participate in the arbitrage that private equity is generating through the consolidation of the industry. Yeah. So the opportunity to retain equity and liquidate at recap, or roll equity and liquidate at recap, those opportunities were not available with DSO 1.0. So when we saw the new iteration of DSOs doing things the right way, we were resistant to DSOs for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, a long time ago, I remember making the statement, we'll never sell a practice to a DSO.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that was driven by the fact that DSOs had a negative connotation, and that DSO 1.0 was not a legitimate transition option. But as we watched these DSOs really learn to stay in their lane and provide optionality, provide wealth creation opportunities to doctors, at some point we did a 180 and decided, hey, we're doing our clients a disservice by not being educated about this option and in the right situation, not putting it on the table. Because especially when you're talking about a large practice, the delta in valuation between a private buyer valuation and a DSO valuation can be extreme. Millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And also we have doctors that are in a situation where they're looking for better work-life balance. They're looking for administrative help. A lot of young entrepreneurial dentists have become a victim of their own success in the sense that they've built really, really big offices. They've been wildly successful, but it's come at a cost.
Oh, yeah.
And that cost is their time, their freedom, and getting to spend quality time, most of the time with their family, with their spouse and with their kids. So there's a lot of doctors that are 10, 15 years into practice ownership. They're in their early 40s that have built multi-million-dollar practices that are looking at reprioritizing their life and taking some chips off the table at a favorable valuation and then getting some help from an administrative perspective.
And, and not necessarily just hanging it up.
Right.
Like they're not ready to hang it up. They're just, again, thinking about slowly doing a transition because we brought it up earlier. The worst time to sell, the worst time to transition is when you're sick of that last page. You grab your handpiece, you just slam it down. I'm out of there, right? And mentally check out. That's the worst time. The best time is, when you still have some fire in your belly and still want to kind of grow the practice, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You want it to be your prerogative that you're selling your practice. You don't want to be forced into selling your practice due to a change in health or you're just completely burned out. Or you may have a life event coming up at some point down the road. You're going to relocate. Maybe you move to a certain geography and built a strong practice there, but eventually you're going to go back home to take care of your parents or whatever it may be. If 3 to 5 years from now that that's in the cards for you, probably, and you have a large practice, makes sense to potentially look at the DSO option now rather than wait to the minute that you're ready to move. And then by default, you're selling to a private buyer for a lower valuation.
No, so wise there. So generally, whenever you work with any clients and they start working with you, how long does that process normally take? Let's say, for example, I'm not kicking around the tires. I want to see what's out there. I want to see what multiples I can get, what kind of offers I can get. From this time that someone comes to you and say, "Let's do it." And to obviously every situation is different, but in general, how long does that process take?
If you're ready to rock and roll and get a deal done, 6 months start to finish.
Oh wow, that's not too long.
We're very efficient. We work quick, but it always starts with a discovery process, right? Let's get to know each other. Let's define your why. Let's figure out what your EBITDA is. Let's talk about practice valuation. Let's talk about the options available in the marketplace. And then if it makes sense, all right, let's go. Let's get it on market. Let's create as much optionality and competition as we can. Let's find the right DSO and then leverage the competition to maximize the outcome.
I love it. Okay, so for those who want to work with you guys, what's the best way to kind of get the conversation started?
Best thing to do is reach out and schedule a call where we can talk about what you're looking to accomplish. I can learn a little bit about your practice, and then we can talk about if it makes sense to take the next step and do a valuation. You can reach me on my cell. That number is 512-660-8505. Also by email, Brannon, Brannon, @dentaltransitions.com. And I encourage you to check out our website. That's www.dentaltransitions.com. It's got a DSO transactions resource tab. It's got a lot of podcasts just like this that gives you insight, gives you information, some articles on there that I think are good to read before you decide to take that next step and start the process.
Awesome. Well, Brannon, thank you so much for jumping on. I've been wanting to get you on for quite some time because there's so many listeners out there, so many viewers out there who are just really misinformed about how the whole process works. And the last thing we want to happen to you is for you to lose a lot of money there, right? So reach out to Brannon. He's going to be a great resource here. Thank you so much for jumping on. And guys, we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.